then we got a hold of a lot of units had their own little bands to play, and so for Chris, have you got it going now?
I think so. Yep.
So then for Christmas, then they had a big hall there in this little town.
Okay. Yeah.
So we got them all together, the whole town, and all the guys gave everything they had.
Food and
from the PX. Then we set up all kinds of games down there. All of our men, just our unit in this town, and officers set that all up for the whole day, and food and all. We got it from our mess hall. This was not a big town. And they all came and spent the whole day, and it was something you won't forget.
Christmas of '43. The irony is that was my first Christmas too, but I was a little young to remember it.
Yeah, so then we were assigned to go to our station let's see, at Taunton, and that was up near Bristol.
Okay.
So that was the town we were going to be at until we went across the channel. So I was medical supply officer and had charge of all the supplies that were given out to all the hospitals and all the small units that were set up around. They had those set up all over England. And we had 10 general hospitals right within 5 miles of our depot there. And then they had, like in Nottingham and all those other places, they had others, but they were just like one general hospital there.
Okay.
Where they were bringing in all the wounded and so on from overseas, you know. Some were already getting over, you know, coming back, like, where they were bombing and be pilots, because we had a Navy base 15 miles from us that went out bombing every day. Stuff like that, you know.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, and so we would go out and supply them too, and so all these little units then we supplied, and then about, let's see, before the invasion then, they had lost some ships that had medical supplies on them. So then I was picked by the NATO allies to go to London to be in charge of getting all this stuff ready for D-Day, because we were going to do that. But when they lost these other supplies, we had to redo a lot of things that we'd been working on, you know, but none of my men or our officers knew when D-Day was. I was the only one, because I'd gone up on this secret mission to do this extra stuff, being they lost supplies. And I knew when we had to get ready, because they only gave me about 4 or 5 days to have this ready because of D-Day.
Okay, was that close?
So then we had to do all that work, and we had these, our men and our officers, we weren't delivering, we had some trucks taking stuff out where the truck drivers had to, but then we had to do thousands and thousands of boxes, and have the same things in each one for different units. So what we had to do then, it was rained all that 30 days. That was the rainy season, never quit once. And we worked out in the rain, and I set up rollers. It would come from the warehouse down this little slanted hill, and then out of the warehouse we would work, and we'd have the same thing come down the roller for each box. Like if we were doing 60, 70 boxes of that, and we had to wax equipment that would rust, like the scissors and all the sterile instruments, so that in this rain and stuff over there, they would rust, so it had to all be dipped in wax. And then each unit had to have the mark, each box of all the things was in it, just like an invoice.
Right, on the outside, so
Yeah,
you knew what you
so
were
they
getting.
know what it was. And so then if you had some units that had 80 boxes, you numbered 1 to 80, and then you had a master invoice, so they had to do all that work. And we had thousands and thousands of boxes. And so we set up those assembly things with those rollers, and different ones would work on those, and different officers would be in charge. So I never quit, and all those days I never went to bed. But and so then this one day, this general came down from England, London, and he was a doctor, but he was a wheel, you know.
Okay.
So here we were working out in that rain, and everybody was, I was talking with him because I was in charge of it, and I'd been assigned to do what I was doing and what I was putting on by the heads up there, you know, and I was doing everything we were supposed to. And he said to me, he said, I want anything that's missing, like things we didn't get that were supposed to be in there. He said, I want those back orders stenciled on those boxes. Well, we had so much Red Crosses and everything else on there wasn't hardly any room, and then you have to stencil those on inside out of the rain, and it'll goof you all up, you know. And I said, that's almost impossible to do now. He says, listen, if I told you to put Jesus Christ and Christmas trees on those boxes, do it. I saluted him, and he headed for London. So I went right in the office and called London. Don't even listen to it. You can't do that. That guy, he must have known him, and he was one of those wheels that was going to show his authority, you know. And that was, I never saw him again.
Fortunately.
Yeah, but isn't that something to tell me that?
Yes.
I never forget that. So then shut it for a minute. We had all these things. We had all these things ready and packed, and then they had to be all covered. They were put on skids, you know, where you could slide them right off these boats and right onto the banks. Had cables on them.
Oh yeah.
So many pounds on each one. I think it was like 2,000 pounds and 3,000, but they were big skids. And these were all assembled and put on those with each unit having the same, like if we made 80 units, we had 80 of those with the same boxes on, but they might take 2 or 3 skids, you know, or more to do them. And then those were all covered with canvas and sealed, and the cables were on. And so when we were ready to move out, they had to cancel it a day or two because of the weather, and then when they called for it, it all was taken and put on trucks and hauled down to Southampton and put on those boats that were those kind that would go in and they could just scoot them right off with just like a track they lay down.
Right.
And then that morning when we started doing that, all those planes went right over our place carrying all those paratroopers.
Okay, yeah, the first wave.
Yeah. So we saw all of that, and we got all that stuff out of there right away. You know, it didn't take very long because they needed it all, and it was going to go like to Le Havre and Utah, all those beach numbers, you know.
Right.
And so that's where that went. And after we got that out, we had to get ready to send part of our troops over. You know, they were going to divide all the different units into halves, so if we lost them on a boat, we wouldn't lose everybody working that way.
I got you.
So then, as long as I was in charge of that, I got to stay till we had more shipments to do, you know. It didn't all just go right out in a day.
Oh, sure.
So then we divided our men, we took 6 of our officers and half of our men that went on a boat that would go over and start going in with the troops. And, well, they did get, the boat they were on got hit, but we only lost 1 man of our bunch.
Okay.
It was torpedoed, you know. And so then we waited, oh gosh, we had all the work to do yet of still supplying troops there, and then casualties that were coming back.
Right, because the hospitals back in England is where the casualties were brought back to.
Yeah, they were bringing all those back there. So until they could get further in over in France, you know, because they were heading for Paris.
Right.
And they had, well, even when we went later, we still had to stay in tents until we got moved forward and got up to Paris. And so then we finally then turned our supply depot over to another bunch that came in from the States.
Back to Taunton.
Yeah, at Taunton. And then the rest of us were ready to go. So, I want to cut that minute now. And that's why I kind of mentioned to you, talked to you about Roger, this pilot.
The one in the Navy.
He said, we watch the channel all the time the troops are going across, so that if there's any submarines out there, they call them back.
Okay.
So this was kind of unusual too. You wonder where you'd be more scared. And so when we were ready to go, we had 6 of our men yet, you know, they were officers.
Right.
And we were going to be in charge of going across the channel, and every night you would, if you went the first night, we drew to see who goes, and you had to go down at the bottom of the ship, and everybody in the boat of the enlisted men down there, and there were thousands of them, had to be hand in hand, and the officer in charge had to get at the end of the line. He'd be the last one out.
When it landed at the other side.
If you got hit.
Oh, I forgot. Okay.
See, because you wouldn't have to do that unless they got the alarm from the Navy that there was a submarine down there. See, and so I drew first, and I went down and was ready, you know, if they had to do all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't go out because they got the report there were submarines out there. And they have at Southampton there, they had a net out where if they can't come in some kind of a...
Oh, to prevent the subs from coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Whatever it was, they call it a net. So then we went on for 5 nights. We tried to go out and cross, and we'd get out near where the channel coming out of there, and we got called back. Well, then on the 6th night, it was my night again. Whatever it was, you know, it come out. I had to go my second time.
Yeah.
And that night, we got about halfway across, and the old alarm went, and we all had to hang on to hands. And I was at the end, and we dropped depth charges, and they were shooting at us, but we never got hit. And so then we landed in the Havre.
About how long from when you left Southampton till you got to the
It took all night.
Several hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they don't go very fast, and you'd think of going across that channel that way, but I suppose the precautions and everything were taken because we started at night and we didn't get there till in the morning.
Okay.
And then we got out of the off the boat. They have those landing things they put down, and we went onto the beach there, and we were near somewhere we went near a town called Rouen.
Okay, I've seen that on maps.
And that's not too far from the coast.
Yeah.
And I know when I rode home to Helen once, I told her I was on the road to ruin.
No, was this July by now? of 44?
This would be, I don't recall exactly what the dates were there, but let's see. 44. Oh, it's later than that.
Oh, okay. So you were in England for some time after.
I had to stay in England there, you know, longer after the invasion.
Okay.
So this got into
almost football season.
Yeah, it was later when I went then, and so then we had to sleep in tents there, and it rained, and we never moved for 3-4 days, and then we gradually kept going toward Paris, and then that's where we ended up and set up our next big supply depot. And so then I was in charge of all that. That was just huge, this building there. And they had a lot of things going on in Paris, you know, and things like that. But England was, like when I went into one of those meetings in England, they were shooting those buzz bombs.
Okay, with
those
the V1s
that
or
were
V2s?
like a tank. A floating tank is what I'd describe them as. They're 6-8 feet long, and when those hit something and exploded, it'd take a whole block out.
Oh.
And so I was at the hotel in London there, and they said you can hear them when I've heard a lot of them, and even the planes that went over England before I left, the German planes, the Spitfires went out one night, and we were out in the field behind those houses we stayed at. I forgot to tell you, when we were in England, we didn't have any place to stay that had any warm spots, so all of our 160 men and officers stayed in English homes. They took us all in while we were there, and that was like the coal miners had struck, and Roosevelt made them go back to work, and finally they got coal after that, but that was after we left. So that was the deal with that. And so anyway, when we got over in Paris, why they had all of our men set up good, and they had them in schoolhouses and near us, you know, 4, 5, 6 blocks from there. And then the officers, they had a big house right near the warehouse. They took over. It was a French home, and they had cooks and everything there. So if they had those cooks, there were just our men there, you know, in this unit to run those supplies.
Right.
And so they did all the cooking for us, their maids and cooks, and we all had rooms there and stayed just a block or so from the warehouse. And so then this was just loaded with, at that time, penicillin come out, and then we took over a lot of the French help, you know, because it was like a warehouse for supplies, and they would try to steal penicillin that worked there, and they'd put under their caps and put a string around their neck and tie bottles down their legs, and they all had to be inspected then from then on.
Oh.
Because they were trying to make money off of that penicillin, because it came in vials, you know, and it wasn't tablets, they'd give shots of it. And so we had to watch all that all the time. And then they had this warehouse. The French must have had that all set up, and we took it over for some reason or other, because there was just floor after floor of every kind of champagne, wine, liquors, everything else. And so then when those officers and stuff from all over there, then, you know, Patton's Army, the whole works were going on up ahead. Whenever they wanted any of that stuff, they just had to make a requisition, and I was in charge of all that and come and write out what they wanted. They'd take this elevator up, there's about 5, 6 floors, and they'd go through that whole thing and want to sample all this wine and stuff. And I remember that one general, we had to carry him out of there once. Would imagine that. But that's the Army. And So then we had to keep track of all that. Even in England, before we left the Navy down at Southampton, got into about 50 barrels of grain alcohol.
Oh, sure.
They drove spikes in it, and so I got called down there to pick all that up, and then we had to bottle it all into bottles and bring it back. And if we had liquor coming in, they'd just throw a box off the truck and let it hit the ground and hold it up, and it had straw in it, and they'd just filter it and drink it that way. And some of those guys down at the port.
Desperate, huh?
Yeah. Well, I forgot to tell you. Then Tom, our oldest son, was born when I was in England.
Okay.
Yeah.
In 44.
Yeah, and that was before I left to go, over to France.